Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is Jonas, reporters for the 21st. And well, we got a little bit more of the fade off filling back in from the previous upside. And of course, this is interesting because we were right at the point where we were about to see green uh, DOC here moving above cyan, and we didn't. We got the rejection just the opposite way. So uh, could give us a little bit more fade. You're not seeing anything though from an MBI acceleration. This is just a breakdown of magenta crossing below. So it's going to be modest. It's going to set up short interest, and that will lead to the next move to the upside. Pretty clear and simple because what we're seeing here from a shakeout standpoint is you got the rising blue, and usually that fills in for gap in between the plateau of gold, and usually a continued rising on that one is going to support price in that sense. So it just becomes a modest thing. And you can see 2.5 still from an MBI white. This is not enough to create any kind of significant short move unless some major spike happens from it. We're not seeing that at this particular stage. So you just have the softening, and it's a nice little setup built into that equation. And of course, that softening of the shakeout, we talked about that, where you get your next buildup of the histogram, and that will start the next rise to the upside from a treasury standpoint. Yeah, well, maybe we get a little bit of turnaround from that. But again, the Fed is not cooperating with what Trump wants to do. And, oil, likewise, this is another one. This is why you see Trump is pushing so hard for peace in these areas, because he'd love nothing more than to remove sanctions from Russia and increase oil supply and further depress price, because that is the motivator, and he knows it, for the economy. And it's really kind of the stumbling block at this particular stage because, of course, the drill baby drill is not working out so well. And of course, you get the articles that shale and everything has reached its cap. Of course, we've been hearing that one for what now, 4 or 5 years, that we've reached the peak on it, and somehow it continues to plug along. But this time, it must be real, because they're not going to discover anything else. So that faded off pretty quickly because the numbers don't support where they want to take that, particularly if the supply continues. But that's very exciting for the euro, because they think again that the U.S. is going to fall into this high inflationary spiral of death, and that means that you should want your money in euros. Wouldn't hold on to that dream very long. From a gold standpoint, also, it was exciting because, again, this builds that scenario of stagflation construct that they're trying to build with consumer confidence, the whole 9 yards. Just not likely to play out that way. Bitcoin and that kind of ignored that, but followed this idea of inflation, because that becomes a secondary motivator, and why it's slightly ahead of the Nasdaq is moving with both gold and Nasdaq in combination. That blending gives you the fear of secondary for inflation, but then also just the overall rise in Nasdaq movement. So ETH didn't have nearly the same effect of it, and that just shows you the relationship difference that's developing. So we've returned back to the previous low from before. What we ended up with was early mid-morning MBI white spike, held off though until further breakdown. But anytime it was magenta below that 25, you're headed for weakness. Even within any pops, it was one of those where you likely are looking for additional weakness below that 25. And so when it finally came below there, you knew you were not likely to hold the 50% very well. And then we ended up with another MBI white spike up at the bottom, but magenta creeping up above that caused some support, but then it broke down right below the MBI white. And of course, that led to where we're at with the fade off at this particular stage. You can see the separation from that on a DOC standpoint, even with the dip of orange, no steel reset, and that's unable to give you any long-term prospect as far as upside. And sure enough, it failed pretty quick. Pretty clean, straightforward. Intraday, again, playing with the call options versus the buys. They wiped them all out pretty much for the week. Now you've got a bunch of new put buyers in there. Um, Not making any difference in the pre-market. They're going to continue to drive this a little bit lower here in the pre-market. We're starting to see a little bit of late recovery for it. We'll see how that open breaks out, but definitely it's going to be a lower open to begin, and then we'll see if it's ready for the turnaround for call buyers. Maybe a little too early for it, but we'll be able to see it intraday as it starts to develop. So that's the long and the short of it for now. As always, though, trade well. Anything relevant, I'll put it on that team chat.